It's not just Venezuela. Now we're talking about possibly invading Cuba. That seemed to be what Marco Rubio was intimating, and even Trump was intimating just yesterday. We played the soundbite on yesterday's show. And not just Cuba, but Colombia, where Trump said the president there better, quote, watch his ass. And then also Greenland is back on the table. And that got very interesting over on CNN when Stephen Miller gave an interview to Jake Tapper about what's going to happen with Greenland, because Trump keeps saying we have to have it. We have to have it. We need Greenland. Like, he's not backing off. It's caused an international incident now. European leaders have spoken out saying, we would like to remind you that it belongs to Denmark and that that's a NATO country and that there'll be no taking Greenland. But here's what Stephen Miller said to Jake Tapper, SOT7.
The premier of Greenland and the premier of Denmark and other Danish officials are responding to a Twitter post from your wife, Katie Miller, herself a former Trump White House official, showing Greenland covered with an American flag, saying soon. After that was posted, President Trump repeated the claim that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security reasons. The Danish prime minister responded to this in an interview earlier today, as reported by Bloomberg, quote, I believe one should take the American president seriously when he says that he wants Greenland, but I will also make it clear that if the U.S. chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that has been established since the end of the Second World War. Can you rule out that the U.S. is ever going to try to take Greenland by force?
It wouldn't be military action against Greenland. The Greenland has a population of 30,000 people, Jake. The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
So that's a long list. I didn't even mention Iran, where Trump said we're locked and loaded and ready to go in if they shoot any protesters over there. And the protests have been growing. And by the way, now there's reports that the Ayatollah has said he's ready to flee to Russia if need be, though these protests are not quite as extreme as ones we've seen in the past where he did no such thing. So whatever, take the Iran with an asterisk. But Greenland rhetoric is ramping up. Your thoughts?
I mean, there's no coherence here. Like Colombia, where President Trump is threatening, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, is a democratically elected leader. Nobody doubts that. He just doesn't like Petro because Petro is a left-wing leader who has been criticizing Trump. So that now is justification for threatening Petro. And we're going to go to war in Colombia, possibly. We're threatening. You can't threaten all these wars in Iran, in Cuba, and not follow through. And that's going to be a lot of different wars that we're then going to be fighting. And then as far as Greenland is concerned, you know, Stephen Miller saying, by what right does Denmark have Greenland? It's like saying, by what right does the United States have California? Or by what right does the United States have Mexico? These are century-old nations that have been defined by their borders and recognized internationally for centuries. And while it may be true that Denmark isn't going to go to war with the United States over Greenland, the entire EU, all of NATO, is going to absolutely separate from the United States if the United States steals land from an EU and a NATO member.
Can I just ask you something? Can I just ask you something? Is that such a bad thing? I don't know. Like, are we...
Look, I don't
even get kicked out of NATO. Like, they can't kick us out. We're funding the whole thing. A lot of Americans, a lot of Republicans have been saying we should dump NATO to begin with.
I think I liked when President Trump was questioning the ongoing viability of NATO because it was a defensive alliance formed to protect Western Europe against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union no longer
Correct.
exists. So I think there's a very good reason for questioning NATO. All I'm saying is that Stephen,
if we didn't have NATO, we might not have the Ukraine war right now. Keep going.
All I'm saying, Megyn, is that while Stephen Miller is right in this very simplistic, dismissive tone, Denmark is not going to go to war with the United States over Greenland. It's only because it can't. There's going to be massive consequences in terms of having entire regions of the world hate the United States, view us as this rogue nation. And you can say, I don't really care about that, but that's what opens up China to all of this influence. That's why China has so much influence, because so many countries have concluded the United States is this bully that uses military force. All of this has major implications. The reason why we get attacked by the Middle East. The reason that there are a lot of people who hate us in the Middle East is because this is the behavior we've been engaging in for the Middle East for decades. We've been overthrowing their governments, imposing dictatorships on them, taking their oil, telling them that they have no rights. Yes, they can't fight us in the sense that they have a military equal to ours, but there's all kinds of repercussions from that. The CIA has a term for that. It's called blowback, that if you just go around the world bullying other countries and taking things that you want, there's going to be a lot of ramifications that you have to take into consideration that are going to come back, to say nothing of the cost of who's going to fight all these wars that Trump is vowing and threatening.
I mean, I don't think Trump wants to get involved in a war. Like, I think you can see that too. He was one of the first people to oppose the Iraq war when Republicans were all defending it. He doesn't want a war. He's defining his foreign policy as these pinpoint strikes where he gets in and he gets out. And by the time you've heard that there's a war on, it's over, right? And he says we're not at war with Venezuela. We're at war with their drug dealers and people like that, he says. But I give Trump the benefit of the doubt that he does not want anything prolonged and would do his best to stop something like that. The risks I think we're looking at here are that the other sides don't agree, right? Like, we didn't want war before we got attacked on 9/11 either.
Right. You can always avoid war as long as the other side just submits and does everything that you tell them to do. The problem is that very often they don't do that. And many of the worst wars have happened not because leaders wanted wars, but because once you start threatening military conflict, you have military buildup, tensions increase, you have escalation, you have miscommunication. All these things can happen in a very unintended way. This is a very dangerous game to be playing. Like, yes, I do believe that Donald Trump doesn't want to fall into some major quagmire in war. The problem is that the policies that he's pursuing are very likely to lead to that. I mean, what if the Venezuelans don't submit to all of his orders? He's already said, we'll be happy to put boots on the ground. And that now you have an escalated situation. Look at how Vietnam began. We're going to send some advisors. We don't want war in Vietnam. And within a few years, we had tons of military, tons of soldiers. And within a few years after that, there were 60,000 American dead soldiers. Not because anyone ever sat out and said, I want to have a decade-long war in Vietnam, but because the policies we pursued led inexorably to that.
I definitely don't think Trump is going to willingly walk us there, but the question is it out of our control? A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th. If you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, you just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.